Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of hi fi black metal. On a journey to find some black metal that has more higher quality production to it, such as spaced out instrumentation or clarity of voice. Those are the two things I'm primarily looking for in this week. Today we're going to be checking out a band called Dissection. A song called Where Dead Angels Lie. Let's dive into this and see what's going on. Oh, a slight tempo shift there from the intro, but sticking with the 6/8. Yeah, okay. That is some thonky bass kicks. Oh, wow. That bass kick is just such a strong presence. Interesting, we have a folk-inspired melody line there. And here it feels like it's been twisted. That third note. Yeah, it's just a hair sharp compared to the acoustic guitar line we heard. Yeah, so that was actually very cool getting to hear the dominant melody line in both the side guitar playing the dotted quarters and the acoustic guitar playing the folk melody line, and hearing how they actually differ on those key points. Wow. Okay, so we shift over to an alternating 5 and 6. Very interesting placement of that. The bell of that symbol right there is dead center. Okay. Yeah, so that is that's interesting. So we're going to talk about the musicality later. I think there's a really cool idea going in here where they take a single idea and continue to expand and extrapolate upon that core idea for every aspect of the song. I feel like even when we move to the alternating 5 and 6 pulse, it still is a variation on this core idea that they utilize throughout the entire song. So yeah, like it feels like there's progression through it, but it all is still the same idea. Like we're going to talk about that later. Um, but first, I want to touch on the production because this is Hi-Fi Black Metal Week. The production is sort of the reason we're here. I'm looking for black metal music with strong elements of production. And like I mentioned at the beginning, what I'm specifically looking for there is mostly clarity of instrumentation, as well as not necessarily specifically something I'm looking for, but I would like to hear use of the entire sound sphere. A lot of black metal tends to feel very compressed and honed in, just very centered, very tiny in a sense. And a lot of the black metal I've heard also kind of goes for a wall of sound concept as well, where all the instruments kind of blend together into the single uniform auditory assault. So those are kind of the two things I'm looking for, I'm looking for the opposite of, right? So in this in this song, there's certainly clarity of voice. Every instrument can be clearly heard. The acoustic guitar came in, I heard it, right? We have our left pan guitar, our right pan guitar, I heard those. The bass, heard it laying down there along with the bass kick, which was very dominant in the mix, and everything going on with the drums. The vocals, very prominently featured. Every instrument has its own little space, they're clearly defined, and they don't really come together to blend into a single sound. But what I find interesting is that the production takes other methods to kind of uniquely identify themselves as something that is not traditional music. I should say traditionally mainstream music. They're not taking a rock approach to production and playing black metal with it. They are taking a component from mainstream rock production or mainstream pop production, which is the separation of the instruments. But that doesn't mean that they just stop there and called it a day. They still want something that feels unique to them. And I will say that I think we're coming up on 700 unique bands listened to on the channel. We're pretty close to that number if I remember correctly. Maybe it's 800. I actually don't remember. We've listened to a lot of bands, though, is what I'm pointing at. And I don't think I've heard anything quite like this. The guitars are panned pretty hard left and right. The electric guitars are. They really don't have too much bleed back into the center. The acoustic guitar and bass and most of the cymbals, as well as the snare and bass kick, are mostly centered. However, the toms, I was gonna say the toms get some panning, but the only time I remember that was in a tom run when it panned from left to right as he went down the toms. So yeah, I can't remember a specific moment where the toms were played just as a part of the a part of the core drum pattern. The only time I remember the toms was in the run, and the run has the panning on it. So are the toms panned, or did they get a panning effect to go along with the rundown? I don't know. I don't remember if the song answered that question. So it could be very true that the toms are centered as well. We actually don't have spatial placement of the drum kit except for special effects. I don't know. I'd have to listen to another Dissection song to get an answer to that. Which brings up more intriguing questions about the placement of instrumentation, placement of instruments. So basically, though, we have this huge overuse of the center channel and huge space between it and the side channels. Um, it creates this huge amount of separation in everything, which honestly is not really felt, which I think is another bizarre aspect of this, is that there is this space between them, but it's not really physically there. Like we've listened to, what was that Colin Stetson track that we listened to, The Fear of something. We listened to it last week or the week before. I think it was the week before. And you could feel the distance between the center instrument, the center voice, the left pan voice, and the right panned saxophone. You could hear the space between them. It felt like they were isolated in the soundscape. And here, I don't know if it just has to do with the width of the instruments themselves, which I'm going to get into in a moment, or some other production trick going on that I don't know. But despite the fact that the guitars are hard panned to the sides, they still kind of bleed into the overall sound. So if I look directly at the guitars, I'm like, okay, this is a hard right guitar. It's not really bleeding into the center at all. But if I'm just chilling with it, it kind of works and just comes together and you kind of ignore the space. Or at least I did when I listened to it, which is a really cool sort of auditory illusion. Helps separate the instrumentation, which is a huge thing for black metal, but it also allows all the instruments to still come together to feel connected for the song. Very cool. That makes me want to check out more Dissection just to dig more into their production and see how this might be used or, well, used in other tracks and how it might affect the overall vibe of other songs. But I talked about width, and I said maybe it's the width of each of these instruments that makes them feel like they're still connected, even though there's all the space between them. And each of these instruments is very large. The bass kick is so punchy that you can feel it. The vocals are huge. They have all this reverb on them. And the interesting thing also, we're going to come back to the vocals because I think I have a lot to speak about them. But the guitars, they have this huge sound to them. They don't feel compressed and sort of, restrained down like metal guitars or electric guitars tend to feel in other black metal that we've listened to, where they kind of get razor honed down into like a very sharp edge rather than this wide, blunt sound. And here they're just very big, booming sounds. I don't know if that's reverb or maybe just less compression being used than other black metal guitarists for their tone. I don't know. It's a large sound though. It feels more like a mainstream guitar sound with some of that signature black metal fuzz put on top of it. Like that static is not completely missing, but it's not as strong as some bands have utilized. It kind of walks that fine line between being more of a just a heavy guitar tone and having that black metal static to it. It walks a fine line between those 2 points. And I think some of that might be pulling back some of that focused compressed element to kind of widen the sound out a bit. Um but yeah, so the vocals are interesting. When they first came in, I didn't really know what to make of them. First of all, there's a ton of reverb on it, which is wild because of what I've picked up lately as we've checked out more and more black metal is that they really prefer a dry sound. It helped keeps everything kind of narrow, which helps everything kind of come together as a singular sound. And just has that overall compressed vibe to it. I even talked about this yesterday with the snare hits, specifically in what was that band? Oh, Wolves in the Throne Room, yeah. And the snare just being super dry. And I think I even talked about this with Umgwa on Saturday's album review. Like, this is just the black metal sound, is to really keep everything rather dry and unproduced. And here we have massive reverb on it. We might even have double tracking, just a very quiet backing track to it, just to give it some extra oomph. It's a very powerful, very loud, very wide reverberant production on the vocals, and it towers over everything. It is like the music is being played by mortals, and they have summoned this deity, and this deity, you can't see them. Like, they're so large, all you hear is their voice booming. Why have you summoned me, mortals? Kind of vibe. And that's what it feels like to me. It is not just above the music, it is sort of in front of it as well. It dominates every aspect of the song that it appears in. It's seemingly wider and louder than everything else. And I think even pitch wise, well, like perceived pitch, because it is a harsh vocal, but it even feels a bit higher than what most of the guitar work is. So, and since the guitar work is the highest pitch of the instruments, because the bass is certainly not going to be getting up there, it sort of sits above everything pitch-wise. Like, it is just above and in front of everything. It is very dominant and prominent in the mix. Very unlike black metal. But what I found most interesting about it is because of this prominence, I can hear a lot of the nuance in it, which I really appreciate because a lot of black metal tends to get compressed down, and it's very difficult to hear some of those smaller elements in the production of it. And here I could hear the natural progression on the vocal cords. Well, probably not the vocal cords. I don't know how black metal vocals work, but I'm going to assume that it's probably something similar to a growl or a fry scream, and that the vocal cords don't actually get engaged. But as usual, I'm not a vocal coach. I'm just kind of saying some things I've picked up while kind of learning from other people. But yeah, so like I can hear like the compression, the crackling that they're physically making, which is just something I've never picked up on black metal before. And there's something very peculiar about black metal vocals to me because they seem to be just more narrow, right? They don't have the booming largeness that growls or fry vocals or fry screams have. They tend to be a bit more, well, compressed, like a lot of black metal stuff. It's just not as big of a sound. And here it's really interesting to kind of hear some of those elements in the production of it and kind of hear how that compares and contrasts to what I've heard in a lot of fry screams, which tend to be produced a lot more clearer, and some of the clearer growls that we've heard. over the years of doing this channel. And yeah, it's also cool just to hear the static of it. Which, like I've said before, black metal, this song not so much at all. But black metal I kind of associate with starkness, contrast, black and white, snow, TV static, radio static even. That's just kind of the sound I associate with the genre. And to hear it so clearly in what I believe is all the human body. I don't think there's a lot of additional compression put on it on the production side. It's just very cool. Especially since, like I said, the rest of the song doesn't really give me that vibe. It really is the vocals there. So yeah, this is a very interesting song vocally for me. It feels like a lightly blackened, a lightly lightly seared version of a different genre. And I don't know what that genre is. So I don't know what this is, actually. This is a weird song. It fits in a lot of areas for me. Like musically, I might as well just dive into this. I don't really think it feels like black metal in a lot of places. We had the double bass kicks with the I think we were doing the blast beats on the snare at one point early on in the track. That was the only time it happened though. And partially, I think that's because the bass kicks are just way overpowering to do double bass like that. And once per song is probably enough. Um, I really wish I had some better headphones that did sub bass better and see if I could really feel those bass kicks. Because I think sub bass is really where they're aiming for because it's at least in my headphones it's a little too muddy. I think I even mentioned that about the bass kicks just having way too much presence, and a lot of that was the muddiness of it, the constant ones. An isolated bass kick here and there just had a real nice thump to it, but when they did the double bass kicks, the 16th notes or whatever they were doing, it was it just got muddied up a little bit. And some of that might be production, some of that might be my headphones. But I do think that they're aiming for a sub bass element with that, and I would love to hear it on a better set of headphones. Um, but yeah, so we have that. We have some tremolo picking at one point in the song, but honestly, not much of that either. The two key compositional techniques that I associate with black metal are sparsely used in this track. In fact, it seems to be, well, it is actually very focused on melody and variation on melody. So, yeah, let's dive into this. The song is written in 6/8. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 throughout the entire song, except for that bridge, which went to a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we get this 11 pulse rather than a 12. Instead of, every bar being 6, we have a 5 and then a 6, then a 5 and then a 6. And that's what gave it that super disjointed feel before coming back into what I think was the final chorus and returning back to the constant 6/8. And I just realized I do not know how to conduct 5/8. I just I just noticed that now when I was using the hand movements on that. I don't know the proper way to conduct in 5/8, and that felt really weird. Um, so we have the 6/8, right? And for the most part, both guitars focus on dotted quarter notes, which means that they play the same note with no extra attacks for 3 beats at a time. So we like da 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 da, and that provides the backbone for the entire song. That is the core melody that gets variations placed upon it. I was trying to find an action word for like that gets varied upon. It's just no, it gets variation placed upon it. And it's really cool because what it does is it lays down the key notes, the most important notes for any melody that's going to be played over it, or any variation that's going to be drawn from it. And we can even hear that in the classical guitar melody line, where beats 1, 2, 3, and 4 emphasize have strong emphasis in them, and we usually see movement, 16th note movement across beats 2 and 3, whereas 1 and 4 are going to be the core notes, the ones that kind of point towards chordal progression. So any of the embellishing lines, the faster movements, the faster licks, anytime that we get those da-da-da, those nice little runs, they're not on these key downbeats, because these key downbeats need to hold out the core note for the section that kind of points towards what the chord is. And those core notes are also defined by these dotted quarter notes, which play on beats 1 and 4. Da, da, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they lay down this core pulse that all of the melody lines end up replicating in their melody. It really is just how do we put embellishing elements between and around these core pulses. And they don't always emphasize the 1 and the 4. There was one melody line where they sort of played around with mostly emphasizing the 1 and kind of giving a a little longer of a length. So if they're playing around with 16th notes, they might put an 8th note on the and of 4. Or on beat 5 to still kind of give it that extra weight and showcase this note without fully lining up with what the core pulse is doing. Again, creating a variation on an idea we already had. We took something simple and we added a little bit of runs to it. We added some licks here and there, some little riffs. Then we took that and we added a little bit more riffage so that the longer notes that we pick get shifted a little bit. And there's actually one more variation that happens off of this. If you listen to the classical guitar, like 3 or 4 minutes, well, no, it's only a 6-minute song. So this was like 25% of the way in. So probably looking like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And it plays that core melodic line that shows up throughout the entire song. And it feels bright, sort of adventurous, right? The guitar stops playing, it does its 4 bars or its 8 bars or whatever, and then stops playing, and its melody gets passed to the right electric guitar. Except there's a small change to it. It feels a little more sinister, a little darker. And what I came to realize is that the core note that sits on beats 4 is slightly different. I don't know what the difference is. I believe it's a little lower than what the acoustic guitar was playing, which to me makes it feel like we've shifted chords, right? Maybe the acoustic guitar is doing it in major and they're doing it in minor, which is going to change the emotion of it. But it's definitely a small tweak to this one note that changes the entire emotion of the line. And I'm real curious where that plays into this, because it creates a divide, not just between the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar based on timbre, which is the way that the instruments sound, but also in the notes they're playing and the emotions they're evoking. It's not just that they are two different kinds of instrument. Well, they're the same kind of instrument, two different sounds, acoustic versus electric, but they're playing the same line with different emotion tied to them. It is a two sides of the same coin kind of vibe. And now, remembering the title of the song, Where Dead Angels Lie, I mean, I wonder if this is going to be part of it, where the more adventurous classical guitar is going to be the brightness of a living angel, and maybe they die, and we hear a variation, a transition of this beautiful line kind of take a darker turn in the electric guitar. If that is a theme that shows up in the lyrics, I guarantee I'm going to tie it back to this because I think it's a very cool idea. Um, and it's something that I want to play around with. I do pass ideas around between my instruments in a lot of my music because I think it's a fantastic tool at creating depth and tying elements together without having to write new parts. It is one of those compositional shortcuts of adding depth to a song without adding work. Why reinvent the wheel? I already wrote something nice. Why do I need to write something else that's also equally as nice? I already have something. Just put a variation on it, give it to a new voice, change the key, change the mode, invert it. Like there's a lot of ways to take something you've already written and find a new way to express it. And that's exactly what they did here from start to finish. They constantly found new ways to express the same idea. And I think that's phenomenal. Um, but looking at this, I've mentioned that it is a lot of um, held out notes, which in this case is the dotted quarters that we hold out for 3 beats each. And it's a lot of little embellishing lines, use of 16th notes to create speed between these resting notes. And neither one of them really have the intensity of typical black metal, does it? It's black metal to me is it's the static and the bleakness that is presented as a sonic assault, the constant attacks, having these a steady stream of 16th notes constantly blared at you, whether it's the guitar or the drums. And it's sort of this overbearing weight of bleakness, of high contrast being pushed down on you. And that's not here. This is very melodic writing. So musically, it's not very black metal to me. However, it does use a lot of repetition, which is black metal for me. So that's what I mean when I say like it kind of fits in a lot of different places. It also has acoustic instrumentation, which again is not very black metal for me. It lacks the fuzz. But the fuzz does show up in the vocals, but it's not a production fuzz. It's a human created fuzz. Natural fuzz? So like there's elements in here that I think if you presented this to me with no context, I think I would still pick up on a blackened element to it. But I don't know that I would ever call this black metal. And that puts me in an interesting place because it means that I really don't know what's going on here. And I talked about on Saturday during the Umgwa reaction that black metal, as I've slowly begun to find out, is sort of a textural thing, not really a compositional one. Almost anything can become blackened, but you don't really hear a lot of stuff becoming newened. Like nu metal doesn't really have a textural thing, it's more of a compositional thing. Um, and I think I made the analogy of death metal. You don't really hear anything becoming deathened, and I was corrected in the comments. There is death pop, so you can apply some formulaic aspect of the death genre to other genres. But again, I still don't think it's as prolific as genres becoming blackened. There is something texturally about black metal that people can apply to other genres, which makes me think that it's more of a textural thing, especially since it shares a lot of compositional elements with extreme metal and subsequently what would become thrash metal, like we explored during Black Metal Origins Week. So, do I have the wrong interpretation of black metal? Because I spoke about not having the constant attacks being something that kind of removes me from that genre here, but I also acknowledge that the compositional techniques aren't really what make the genre. So, if black metal is a textural thing, and I don't really get a lot of the black metal texture here, and I don't get any of the compositional stuff, which might not even be a core aspect of black metal, is this black metal? I don't know. As usual, genre it has its worth, it has its place, but also I think people put too much weight on defining genre. But for the sake of conversation here, I do want to ask, do you guys consider this to be black metal? Because for me, like I said, it kind of sits in a weird place. I can hear some elements of it compositionally, I can hear some elements of it production wise, but they're not really the core aspects of it. The song feels like something else to me, but I also can't deny that it's very black metal. So at best, I would probably call this blackened something else, but I can't really hear anything other than black metal that I would assign this to. There's no other genre that I think this fits under, even with the blackened adjective. So I probably would lump this into black metal, but admittedly, I'm a metal genre novice. I often get my genres wrong, especially once we start entering more areas like this where it's kind of a bit more fuzzy, more of a gray area. So, yeah, leave me comments. Let me know what's going on with that. Let's dive into some lyrics real quick here and see what's up. Um, See if I can't, I mean, this is the second video in a row I didn't have these pulled up prior, and I really gotta get on that. Okay, wasting time waiting for things to load. So we got verse, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus. Interesting. Also, the second chorus is, oh, it's repeated? No, it's got a variation. They love variation. There's so much here. Okay. Verse 1. In the dawn, an angel was dancing, surrounded by an aura of light, but in the shadows, something was watching and with patience awaiting the night. Okay. So we got an angel looking. Oh, an angel was dancing. Just out there chilling, and something was ready to kill it. Or at least to be a predator, to prey on it. Mournful night, attractive night, your dark beauty obsesses me. That is something that the shadows said. It's in quotations. An angel bewitched by the shadows, seduced by the whispering lies. We hit the chorus. A spell was cast and the sky turned red. The angel's heart froze to ice. The blackness that falls is coming to stay. Under the snow lie angels so cold. They switched up the rhyming scheme and decided not to rhyme at all in the chorus, whereas in the verse it was every other line. Oh, no, I take that back. Light and night rhymed. Dancing and watching had a soft rhyme. And the last four lines of this stanza did not rhyme at all. Night me, shadows lie. Interesting. So they're kind of not utilizing any rules. I don't even see any meter patterns throughout here either. There is a nice sort of cadence to everything, but it's not like we have to have, 8 or 10 syllables per line. So, yeah. So let's see. The shadow killed the angel with a spell. And then the snow buried it. Alright, so verse 2. Dusk has passed, and a cold morning breeze is sweeping all over the plain. On the ground lies an angel with skin so pale, on her face an image of pain. Snow is now falling to the frozen ground. The angel is covered by white. Frost is spreading across the plain to welcome the eternal night. So here we do have a rhyme every other line. And we do have, well, no. I was going to say we do have a bit more of a metric pattern going on, but it kind of falls apart in the second half of the stanza. So this is interesting. Verse 1 is the beginning of the story. Then we hit the chorus, which is the end. This is after the angel has been frozen and snow covers it. Then we back up a little bit. and we look at the angel in pain as the snow begins to fall and cover it. Then we go back to the chorus, which of course is the final bit of the story. It's weird jumping around time concept. Interestingly, between verse 2 and the chorus, we have a pre-chorus. The dress is white with crystals of ice and frozen roses so red, roses of blood from an innocent soul. On the plain lies an angel dead. So if you haven't picked up what's happened so far, they lay it out very clearly for you in this pre-chorus before diving into the chorus, which again, like I stated earlier, is a bit of a variation. We do the same thing we saw last time. Oh no, no, this is different. Okay, so we start out with a spell was cast and the sky turned red, the angel's heart froze to ice. But instead of saying the blackness that falls is coming to stay, under the snow lies angel so cold, we change it up to in the gloomy sky, black clouds are gathering rather than a blackness that falls. The silence was broken by cries. A spell was cast and the sky turned red and angel's heart froze to ice. We repeat that in the gloomy sky where the silence where dead angels lie. So it's interesting. We're taking bits and pieces of everything and kind of putting small variations on it, which is something that we've talked about already in this video in the music. So it's very cool to see some of the compositional elements on variation being applied here as well, where each variation can still be inspiration for another variation, and where a third variation on the core idea cannot be inspired directly by one of the variations, but picking and choosing aspects of the others, of everything that came before it. Very cool. The bridge just says, touch the snow, caress the lifeless sculptures, die. And then our final chorus has yet another change to it. The blackness that falls is coming to stay. Under the snow lies angel so cold. Which is the final two lines from the first chorus. So we're starting with that. We're skipping the idea of the spell. It says, yet with each crystal of frost that is falling, another story is told. Then we repeat the second repetition of the second chorus. A spell was cast and the sky turned red. The angel's heart froze to ice. In the gloomy sky, the silence where angels die. Or the silence where dead angels lie. Yeah, very cool. They continue to put variations on the chorus and find new ways to utilize the chorus as a storytelling structure rather than a musical hook structure, using the repetition to get it stuck in your mind. They're using the repetition to allow small variation on the story for new details to emerge through the use of repetition. Very cool. I greatly appreciate that. Interestingly, it's also a song that I couldn't hear the words when they were actually doing it, so I couldn't pick up that we were actually having all this variation in it. But I really enjoy that. But yeah, so like we have a mountain, we have snow, we have light versus dark. Like this is very much what I associate visually with the black metal sound. I think it's so strange that it's paired with the least, or with the song that falls under the black metal banner that I least associate with these visual ideas. If another black metal band had done this in a more traditional wall of sound, heavy static kind of style, I would have been like, yep, these images fit perfectly with what I heard when I was listening to it. And this time they kind of don't, which is going to be a personal bias kind of thing, right? This is what I heard or what I saw when I listened to it. It's very possible that other people would hear this and get more of that same static element out of it. As for the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar, I think that's pretty plain to see. We got the angel and the shadow, and we can kind of see these two sides of the same coin where they're both sort of these supernatural elements in a mortal plane, and they both kind of walk the same lane, I suppose. Walk the same lane. What does that even mean? They walk the same path. Where they come to the mortal plane for their own indulgences. The angel dances around and the shadow is obsessed by this angel and decides to murder it with a single spell, which I gotta say is the least brutal thing that I think I've heard in in a track like this. I kind of was expecting as I, was reading this opening verse that it's going to be a bit more gruesome, especially with this album art of the shadowed, robed figured on a black horse with a giant scythe. And no, they went very PG with it. Just used a freezing spell. It is interesting that it also touches on repercussions of this event. A blackness that falls is coming to stay. There's something else in here too. I don't remember though. I can't. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Anyways, it felt like there were repercussions of this attack though. And I'm kind of lost here too. It says each crystal of frost that falls on the angel is another story being told. That line's kind of going over my head, but yeah, I do think there's a lot of elements in the lyrics that do show up in the music, and there's a nice synergy between the two of them, though, like I said, interestingly, this is the most black metal visually I get out of the lyrics, and it's paired with one of the least black metal songs that I've heard in the genre. So this is where you guys come in. Hit me up with your comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that I touched on, you might want to expand on, or something that I didn't hear at all, I didn't talk about, and you're like, man, how do you miss that completely? Let me know. I'm here to learn just as much as you guys. I posed the question, do you think this is black metal? Would you put this in black metal's camp? And, if you don't, what genre would you call this? And if you do, what's your justification? Like I said, I would toss it in there, but just because I don't know where else to put it, and I do think it kind of fits into it, but it also goes against a lot of what black metal is to me. So, I'm curious where people sit on this. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. You can pick up some merch, join the Patreon to vote on future themes and songs. You can join the Discord community. You can follow me on Twitter. You can submit special selections. There's just a bunch of links in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. There's one more video. It's already out. It's our special selection for the day. Otherwise, see you guys tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue on with hi-fi black metal and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.